Thank you for tuning into Benchmark Studios podcast, where we built a space for students to be heard and to connect to our community. Today, Nate Luvise, a former Benchmark student and current leader, hosts an insightful discussion with Ryan Tierra, Ken Melman, Nate Ballas, and Whit Welch. In this discussion, they touch on multiple pressure points within the juvenile justice system in America. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Get out there and make some positive connections with your community.
Have the honor and the privilege to sit with three super intelligent and very important people that I just got the honor to go see them speak, and I was really blown away by that. So we could start at the end of the table.
All right, my name's Ryan Tierra. I'm a trial court judge in Lycoming County, which is north central Pennsylvania, pretty rural. And one of my primary things is I handle juvenile court.
I'm Ken Melman. Appreciate being here. I live in New York. I'm a partner at a firm called KKR. It's an investing firm. I also am a undergrad at F&M, Franklin and Marshall College, which is how I met Will and Carla and got involved in Benchmark. And both at work and outside of work, I work very hard to identify organizations like Benchmark that help provide opportunity for folks and appreciate the ability to build potential in individuals who are involved in a more challenging background.
Hi, I'm Nate Ballas. I'm the director of the Juvenile Justice Strategy Group at the Annie E. Casey Foundation in Baltimore. The Annie Casey Foundation, we focus on brighter futures for all children in America. And I'm privileged to be able to do that, focusing on young people who experience the juvenile justice system. We want to help them have good lives, keep them out of the juvenile justice system whenever possible, and keep them connected to school, work, family, community, all that good stuff.
I think we could jump right into it, though. I think one of the big questions that I have is, like, when you were younger, right? Going back to when you were younger, I know it's a ways back for some of you guys, right?
Easy.
But when you were younger, who did you like look up to? Because obviously, me growing up, I didn't look up to probably guys that you guys looked up to. A lot of people that I looked up to were, gang members and things like big drug lords and stuff like that. Because that's the stuff that I was shown. I didn't know anything else other than that, So a lot of my brothers and things like that were in that type of lifestyle. So that's kind of what I looked up to, and that's who I was inspired to be. So who did you look up to?
I was blessed with having two parents who were really involved with me. I joke sometimes it was more than I wanted their involvement, but I had a dad, and I was thinking about it, like, he was just very steady. He didn't overreact to anything, even if I had done something stupid. He kind of kept the course, and I kind of knew there were certain parameters to stay within, even if I was kind of being a knucklehead. Like I've always had that. I think I know I'm very lucky that I had that.
Right.
Me too. I was, blessed by having two parents that modeled what I wanted to be as an adult. They loved each other. They cared about their family. They had good priorities. They're both really smart, and that was unbelievable. I was also really fortunate. I grew up with 4 living grandparents, and they were a really important part of my life. And so family was really critical to what I looked up to growing up.
Yeah, I'd had the same. I definitely looked up to my parents, who set an example for what I could be. I think the idea of that it was important to give back to your community. It was important that family was important. My grandparents too, but I wasn't the only people I looked up to. I mean, I think my parents weren't cool. They were my parents, So you got to look up to someone who's cool. And for me, sports was a huge thing. So when I grew up, like, all I wanted to be was Isaiah Thomas, the basketball player for the Detroit Pistons when I was a kid. Like, that's what I thought I was going to be. You learn pretty quickly that that's not going to happen. So I think I had a lot of those same things. I was looking up to, basketball players, musicians, things like that too. But it was always like grounded in family. Right.
And the other people that you looked up to, like, all right, so you said basketball players and things like that. Is there people that you guys looked up to as far as like not in the category as family, but just people that you couldn't like talk to on a regular day basis? People that, like, you seen what they were doing and you seen their interviews and you seen them talk and you kind of wanted to implement those things in, like, who you are? Like, how did it build you and shape you to who you are today?
I say I don't have anyone that jumps right out at me like that. That I would say from a distance, because I would look to someone closer. I had a coach who I played football, and in 9th grade I hated him. He rode me and was hard and critical, but I started realizing the reason I hated it was because it was accurate.
Right.
What I wasn't doing right, and I wasn't taking responsibility. He is who I wrote my college application, or I wrote my college essay. I wrote about that relationship because from my freshman year to my senior year, how he became a mentor for me. And a lot of it was me learning to take ownership for my actions.
Accountability.
And I tell you, 8th, 9th grade were not good years for me in accountability.
Right.
And so somewhere after that,
It's difficult.
it took somebody kind of being very direct
Right.
about those.
Okay.
So I'll give another example, a little older, but it's at college and it involves F&M. So as a professor at F&M, you guys may remember named Stan Mikulak.
Yeah.
Stan Mikulak was a professor of international relations in the government department. I grew up really interested in politics and government. And this dude was both an incredible lecturer, so much charisma, really funny, and a killer hard ass.
Right.
So this dude would, when you finished an exam, he would make people in the class who had answered the wrong way or in ways he thought weren't intelligent stand up in the front, and he would have them speak while he like trolled them and basically harassed them. And he was incredibly tough, and he was really, really, really smart. And I loved him, and he was one of the best professors I ever had in my life. So I went to Harvard Law School after F&M. I never had a better professor in my life anywhere than Stan Mikulak because he was so good on the content, and because here's what it was. And this is something that everyone ought to listen and appreciate. And it's the same thing with your coach. If somebody gives you grief or someone's hard on you, you know why they're doing that? Because they care about you.
Right.
The worst thing in the world is for people to pat you on the back and say, you're doing okay, when you know you can do better.
Right.
And your coach and Stan Mikulak, and for folks listening to this, kids who have somebody in your life, maybe a parent, maybe someone here at Benchmark, someone else, who kicks you in the butt, they're not doing that to be jerks. They're doing that because they love you and they care about you, and they don't want to see you not be your best.
Right.
And that's what Mikulak did better than anybody else. And he was a professor that I came to respect in a massive way because of it.
Yeah, that's real. I mean, I had mentors in my life too that kind of did the same thing. And that we on the topic of mentors and mentorship, how impactful and important do you think mentorship is to young youth and juveniles that we work with, or just people that like you work with on a regular basis? And how did it impact you? You know, obviously you needed mentors to be who you are today. If anybody says that we got to this point in our lives with just us, it's a lie.
That's foolish to think that. Yeah, I always say I get humbled when I think I know the answers, and actually I hear kids I'm working with, they've got it figured out better than I do at times. And
Right.
I said, always got to be listening to learn. But going back to what you're saying about mentorship, that is the biggest piece that's missing when I see kids. The reason I'm dealing with kids in court is because there's something missing in that dynamic most of the time. That there are some times that some kids' behaviors have nothing to do with the situation they're coming out of. A lot of times their behaviors are survival. It's really figuring out how are they feeling important in life, how are they getting what they need in life. And a lot of that's because there's not a mentor there helping them.
Right.
It's interesting you say it because I think like the Professor Mikulak example, we all need mentors in our life, but it's also, I think, is really tied to one of the important things that you do here, and that is a misunderstood concept, I think, in the justice system and in the juvenile justice system, which is the topic of accountability. We are accountable in our lives to the people who matter to us. No one feels accountable to the local police officer just because he wrote a ticket on the car. Like, that is a technical thing we may have to do, or because they stop you. We're accountable to people who we want to impress, the people who we want them at our back, and we want them to call us out on our shit when we do things wrong, right? Like
100%.
Those are the people who we are accountable to. And so I think that idea of mentors, one of the reasons why it's so important is you want people who are credible to you, who you believe in. And I want that person's approval. I want that to be somebody who also, when I do bad, will tell me that I'm doing bad. And I think even when kids get upset to hear that, they're going to appreciate it if it comes from people who they respect. And I think we're missing that in life in general. And it's not always part of how we work with kids.
Can I jump in and ask a question then? Because I love what Nate just said about we're accountable to the people, just the people in our lives. For you, how do I, in my role, gain your trust that you want, like I can have that dynamic with you with when I talk to you, that I'm not just another person who you don't care about. Like I have a fear that I'm a talking head and you can't wait to get, people can't wait to get out of that courtroom. So they're not listening. I want to bridge that gap. So how do I become the person Nate's talking about? When you were in court and stuff, how would I be that person?
I don't think it happens. Well, I know it for sure. It definitely doesn't happen right away. Like when Will first did a presentation at Phoenix Academy, and that's when I first met Will, it didn't happen right away. And I was real like, I didn't know if I should, I didn't even know if I could trust him or go down to the program. You got this little white guy, right? Short little husky white guy coming in, talking to us that he wants to make our life better. And I'm like, what do you, and it doesn't cost anything. You can come to our gym for free. And I'm like, that's not really how the streets work though. So if you're doing something, most of the time it costs something, right? So I didn't trust him at all. But a lot of times I can't tell you how many times I messed up in front of Will and he like chewed me out for it, whatever the case may have been. But it was never like, all right, I'm completely done with you. The door always stayed open. The communication was always there. He never kicked me out of program, no matter what. And I really remember this one time when we were he started taking me to his meetings, and I'm sitting in the meeting and we leave the meeting and I had a whole bunch to say after the meeting, and he looked at me and said, well, what the fuck are you doing? And I said, what do you mean what I'm doing? He said, well, why aren't you talking in the meeting? And that's after that, it was game over. It was a game changer. Now I felt like I can be heard in this meeting. I know Will respects me and he wants me to put my input in the meeting. And he told me, he was like, what do you think I'm bringing you to these meetings for? So that you can speak. You bring a different perspective. And I think that once you show a kid that you value that and you just want to listen to them and you value their perspective, I think that's when you start building that relationship.
And that's what's really cool about what my observation, and you're in there more often, about Benchmark, is everybody comes in like that. Mm-hmm. Everybody here is respected.
Right.
Everybody here has someone who will never throw you out, who always cares about you, who always wants you to be involved, and who's going to say, when you don't do your best, we're going to give you shit, because we should give you shit.
Right.
And while doing it, guess what? You get to work out in an awesome gym, and guess what? Squats and deadlifts are not just like fun things to do. They're really good for every component of your life, because they've done studies that explain when you work out really hard, it releases a chemical. And the chemical lets you focus more.
Right.
The chemical makes you smarter. The chemical, endorphin, makes you be able to be more disciplined. And so think about that. You get to come to a place where people care about you, where they are going to say, we're going to hold you accountable. You can hang out with folks who are fun to hang out with, and where you're going to work out in a way that is good both for you physically and also for your mind.
Right. And the truth is, like, it's like I said, like the door never closed. No matter how many times I messed up, it didn't matter. It didn't matter to him how many times I messed up. He was gonna fix it, we were gonna correct it, and we were gonna move forward. So I really felt comfortable after that. I felt comfortable making mistakes. So sometimes when I spoke and I said the wrong thing, you shouldn't have said that. Maybe if you worded it like this, and now I'm learning. And then now I'm respecting him as who he is, and now I'm looking at him. So in a lot of meetings, I'm an observer. So I like to sit back and watch. So now I'm watching him and how he moves in meetings and what he does, and I just mock it. And then whatever he was doing, I just implemented it in what I was doing. And that's how we, that mentorship kind of came about. Other people in my life too as well, though, like that come from similar backgrounds as me, that who have already made it out, they've helped me out a lot too. Roman, who has a similar background like me, there's some things that he could talk to me about because he just gets it and he relates to it that Will probably can't talk to me about. So the power of having multiple mentors in your life is super important. I got another mentor named Mark Corman. He's like this little 5'5" white man. He's really tiny. I'm sorry, Mark Corman. I know you're probably going to see this. I apologize. But you wouldn't, we've walked into places and people look at us like, what is this relationship, right? But he's helped me so much understand like who I am, and I feel like in Benchmark program I only had one tool, and it was a hammer, and it was my way or no way. And he taught me how to have these tough conversations with people so that I can get into certain rooms and then I can express how I feel and we can get something done. Not everybody works how I work. So having mentors in my life was for sure important. How many mentors do you guys have like right now? It's probably a lot though, but
yeah, and they come in like I love how you said it because they come in different shapes and sizes,
Right.
literally and figuratively. I mean, they are they're people in work, people I look up to. There's lots of people who I've learned so much from, and I feel like one of the life lessons is to be listening more than talking, even though I like to talk, because there's so many people you can learn from
Right.
who've had in different walks of life. In this world, a lot of my mentors are people a lot younger than me, right? Who have had experience in the system, who have had lives that were much harder than mine, who've taught me a lot about what it took to overcome that, who've corrected me on some of my misconceptions about what I think is going on,
Right.
and so I continue to have that. And honestly, at almost 50 years old, my parents are still my mentors, right? Like I'm still looking up to them. I'm still asking for advice. Those things don't really go away. So yeah.
I agree with that. And I also think something that you said that was so important, you were talking about how you watch how Will speaks and you try to emulate him.
100%.
I think that if you can watch anybody who's really good at something and watch how they do it and then figure out how they prepare to do what they do, you can learn a ton. So I used to be, before I was in business, I was in politics, and I watched so much in the late 90s of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's really articulate. And if you watch how he explains things and how he expresses himself, there's so much you can learn about what words you might use or the way that he answers questions and listens to people and engages. That's one example. I have a personal trainer. He's a mentor to me because if you're really into fitness and working out, then having someone that's really smart about that can be a mentor to you too. So think about everything you want to do in your life and figure out someone that does it really well and figure out how you can either get to know them or, I don't know Bill Clinton, but I can watch him. I can go on YouTube and watch a whole lot of how he speaks.
Right.
And if everybody does that, then you have direct mentors that you get to know that are in your life. And then there are other people that you're observing that you can view as a mentor.
Right.
Oh, I would just add that basically everybody you surround yourself with is a mentor either in a good or bad way.
100%.
Because I think there are a lot of people who it positively influenced me that I don't want to use the term mentor, but I realize that they hold me accountable as somebody who I'm worried about what their opinion about.
Right.
But I never think about, sit back and say, oh, that's my mentor or something like that. But it's really everybody you surround you with. So it's important to sometimes be selective and trying to explain that to kids. Sometimes you need to be selective about who you are putting around you.
Yeah. It's that like saying like you are who you hang around.
Yep.
You know? Show me 4 millionaires, I guarantee you become the fifth one. Show me 4 bums, most likely you're the fifth bum. You're right. So it's kind of like that.
The other thing I think that is so important for folks to appreciate is that if you've got really challenging situation going on in your life,
Right.
the way your mind works is when you deal with that situation, you develop coping and adapting mechanisms.
Right.
So people that have grown up in an environment where they were worried, for example, about what someone else might do to them, they're really good at reading people.
Yeah.
They have crazy high EQ.
Right.
And other people who might learn differently than I do are people who are going to be in a place where, because they learn differently, they're going to see things I'm never going to see.
Right.
So like there's a ton of people who are crazy successful who are dyslexic. And that's because of the way their mind works is they may not read the same way I read, but they're going to see things I could never see.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely observed a lot. And I think I really started learning that from when I didn't know Will and I was in the streets, and it was more of a survival thing where I need to read this room and make sure that I can get out this room safely. Right. So I'm really just observing everyone and making sure that I know what's going on.
But like, let me say something about what you just said. When you got, you so think about before you were here, you were in a world where your survival depended upon
Right.
whether you could read what people's intentions were.
Right.
And you could understand them. So, you know who else was like that? Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
So Amazon, he built, and if you watch what he did, he was a brilliant salesman for Amazon. All these entrepreneurs, all these guys and ladies that are billionaires that build these companies, ultimately, their ability to be effectively selling their product or their service is huge. And that's a skill you got.
Right.
And you probably got it better than they got it because of the world you lived in. So how do you put that to work? So everybody that's listening to this who's thinking like, how do I deal with this situation? Think about the skill you have in one kind of situation, how incredibly powerful it could be in another.
Right. But I don't even think I had the opportunity to like think about how well I can do this in the professional world just because I never had that opportunity or even seen myself. And I could never see myself in a room with 3 guys to your statute. You know what I'm saying? I never could picture that in my life, right? I could never see it. So I think exposure equals expansion. Will took me, and the first time we ever went somewhere, he took me to Boston, right? And we go down there to see this other weightlifting program, and he had this, he had this whole thing set up where like we were gonna go walk to Boston College and walk around and go to the park and go out to eat. And I stayed. The only time I left was when we went to go see the program. And when we got back, I stayed in the Airbnb and I slept the entire time because I never had a bed to myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No one knew that though. But I always slept with my little brother. My little brother works at Benchmark Program now. We slept in the same bed all the way through high school. We were in the same bed. So when we went out there, he's showing me all these different new things, but I really just wanted to sleep in the bed. That was enough for me to be like, yo, I can get this for myself. The room was nice. The Airbnb was nice. The water was out of a little thing that was filtered. It was nice. We're not drinking out the spigot, So it was a crazy experience for me, and that just opened up a lot of doors where like I could see this for myself now. So how do we get the same opportunity that I had to these other kids so that they can see how effective they can be from what they learned already by just surviving into this professional role?
I use the term, I feel like kids don't know how to dream. Like that's like all the time. I'm like, they have like this blinders on, they're very narrow, what they're in front of them. Like, could you saying you were trying to survive? So what's in front of you is what you know. And I'm like, why? These kids don't know how to dream.
Well, the big thing here is shifting perspectives, right? So many kids like that you talk to, you work with, if you talk to a young kid, they think short term. What's in front of me right now? I'm not worried about buying a house. If you're talking to me about real estate, I don't care about real estate because I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to eat tonight, right? So what we do and what I do when I teach lessons, every lesson I try to make sure that I'm teaching, wherever it is, I'm trying to make sure that it's applicable to your life right now. You can leave out of this door, you can leave out of this room, and you can apply this to your life right now. But honestly, I really think that exposure equals expansion. Kids don't know how to dream. I can't see that for myself. But let you fly me out to Miami, and you take me, it's not even your mansion. It could be someone else's mansion. We just do a house tour. Now I start to think. Yeah. Now I'm like, yo, this is obtainable. I could do this stuff, right? I never rode in a Tesla. First time I rode in a Tesla, I was like, this is amazing, right? He got the car parking itself, and it's telling us when other cars is around us. I'm like, we're in a spaceship. This is crazy. And mind you, I'm 25 or something like that. So then I start to think again, like, this is obtainable. I can do this. But the truth is that kids need to be exposed to it. Yeah. We only know Lancaster City. They only know Lancaster City. They only know Maryland, Williamsport, New York. They only know like those 5 boroughs. That's all they know. Right. They could take a train and go over there. That's all they know. So how do we get them outside? And how do we start to do that? Is there a program? Like, what do you guys think? How can we start to show these kids that there's more than just what's in your area?
Because like along those lines, what was your thought? The idea of going to college, was that like so foreign to you? That idea of like you'd go to like so kids that you ran with ever talk about college?
So when I played football in Coatesville for a couple of years, just two years, and that's all those kids talked about was college football, and that's the only time I thought about it. Before then, college wasn't even on. Like after, I don't even know if we're gonna get through high school, right? Yeah. When I went over there and I surrounded myself, right? You hang around with 4 millionaires, you're most likely becoming the 5th one. And when I started hanging around them, that's college was all I was thinking about. What happened was my mom got up. I don't know why she left, but she just ended up moving to Georgia. And she said, either you're coming with me or you can figure it out. And I told her, I said, well, I'm going to figure it out. I got 1 more year. I'm getting college letters. I'm going to college. I was homeless for a while. couldn't figure it out, and I had to move back where I came from. So now I'm back in Lancaster City.
All right.
College wasn't an option no more. We're back to surviving.
Yeah.
You know? So I did think about college when I played football in Coatesville, but after that, once you took me out of there and I just couldn't play anymore, I went back to surviving. I had to figure it out.
Well, I think to your question, I think we need, when you're asking what does it take to expand young people's exposure who don't have it to the wonderful things that are around them, that's part of where mentoring comes in. And that's where part of programs like this come into play. I think we also have to make those places welcoming for those young people. I mean, I'm in Baltimore and, it feels like we're trying to make public places unavailable often for young people. We paint a lot of kids with a broad brush, so if kids are up to no good and kids are messing up at the Inner Harbor, then we make it hard for all kids to go to the Inner Harbor. We don't necessarily make these places feel welcoming for Black kids who are coming from parts of Baltimore to come to these public spaces that other people cherish. But I think the point you make is a real one. I mean, I worked in the system in Washington, D.C., and it was remarkable in a city with that much stuff to see, how many kids really had barely left their neighborhoods where they were from. And giving opportunity so that it feels that they can go there and having mentors who can take them to see it. Kids aren't necessarily going to want to go by themselves to go to the Smithsonian. It could require someone to say sometimes, I know when I was a kid, we're going to the Smithsonian. Like that's how you get exposed to that stuff.
Right. Who took you there?
My parents took me, when I was a kid. Yeah, they take you. And it didn't mean we always wanted to.
Right.
I would rather play basketball than go to an art museum.
Right.
But sometimes you need to see an art museum to expand your world.
Yeah. And I also think to what you're saying, like sometimes your parents didn't give you an option. Mm-hmm. This is what it is. And I think a lot of parents nowadays, I got two kids. I got a little boy that I'm with every single day. Mm-hmm. And truth is, there is no option. Mm-hmm. You don't get an option. You're a child, and I know what's best for you until you start. Right now you're a child, so you don't have no responsibilities. And then I feel like you turn into a little boy and you start learning about responsibilities, and then you turn into a man, and that's when you have responsibilities that you take care of. I think those are the different stages, right? Yeah. And right now, I think there's too much options for these kids. Like as far as you don't have to do this, you can do this, and I think we need to kind of eliminate some of those options where it's like, no, you need to play football. No, you need to play 2 sports in school. That's what you need to do. That's the requirement.
At my house, we basically have a rule. You're going to be involved in something. Right. And if you don't want to play a sport, you can be in the band. You can be in the musical. Doesn't have to be what I want.
Right.
But you're going to be involved in something besides just going to school.
It's interesting. In one of the places that we work with a juvenile justice system is in Tacoma, Washington, Pierce County, Washington. And one of the things that they really changed about their system for young people on probation, they have all kids are expected on probation as part of it to participate in a positive youth development opportunity. And your point about choice is a really interesting one. The idea is you cannot ride out probation on your couch. Mm-hmm. It's not just not getting in trouble. Yeah, that's not what it means.
Right.
But amongst those opportunities, it's like 20 different things. So the idea is for some kid, it might be that they have this boat building program and you literally learn how to build boats and you can be right on the water in Tacoma. For some, it might be culinary. For some, it might be the bike or skateboarding or hip hop there's a million things. You want to create options, but it's not optional to participate. It's your family rule.
I take that from my family and I put it in my courtroom because I will be, especially the kids that seem to have too much time in their hands. I'm like, what do you like to do? Mm-hmm. And if they say it's a sport, then I'm like, all right, you're going to sign up for something, or you're going to play it directly. You're going to do something, and the probation officer is then the one who makes it happen. But we basically will do that. Like you're going to come up with something, especially the kids that say, I don't care, I don't like anything.
Right?
Really? You don't like anything?
Right.
We're gonna change that then. So.
Yeah, and I think that's what really makes the difference when a kid like me steps into the courtroom and I see you, and then I've never heard no other judge say that. Hey, look, you're gonna do something. Mm-hmm. What do you mean I'm gonna do something?
Yeah, I get some of those looks.
And just like that, we are right back with the Benchmark Podcast, the Benchmark Podcast. But Ken had to leave us, so now introducing
pinch hitter.
The pinch hitter.
That's crazy. Yeah, my name is Whit Welch. I'm the director of programs at Benchmark.
Cool. So before Ken left, we were talking about just mentoring, exposure equals expansion, getting kids out there, exposing them to different things so that they can broaden like their dreams and just we deal with a lot of kids that think short term, just kind of shifting their perspective so they start thinking long term. I kind of want to change the conversation into like, how do we feel like, or what do you think the biggest, like, I feel as though like we deal with kids that have gun charges and homelessness, and they're fighting all these different things. But what do you think like the main core root from all these problems stem from? Right? So like the question, I have a gun, like we're not talking about me stop having a gun. We're kind of why do I have a gun? Yeah. What's the reason I have a gun? Also me and Whit never used why. Like, why did you do that? Because that sounds accusatory. Yeah. And actually, Will had me read a book. It's called Never Split the Difference. And we use what and how questions when we talk to kids. But I think that's the main thing. So, like, I just rambled on for like 10 minutes about nothing.
No, that was good.
No, I have a question.
So we was just rambling.
So how do we do that when you're saying you don't use the why? Because that's really hard for me in my job. So, kid has a gun. So you'd ask them how what's the question you're asking them? So
instead of why did you have the gun?
Yeah.
What makes you feel as though you need a gun?
Mm-hmm. All right.
You can always change any why question into a what and how question.
Yeah. And I think the framework too, because even like some people will try to get away, especially around like guns. They'll be like, how did you get the gun? And it's like, that's still like accusatory because it's not person focused. It's like the crime. That's like the main point that we're trying to talk about.
Right.
And that's
not it.
No, it's critical. We're trying to figure out that language because I'm thinking the way I think you are, like, what is going on that this kid's doing this? What's underneath the surface?
Right.
But how do I get there without asking, like, why do you have a gun? Is helpful for me to understand that, like, just asking in a different way.
Yeah.
One of my curiosities, like, as a judge is, because I think this is I'm really glad we're talking about this because I think it's different for Nate to ask those questions than for a kid in front of you in a courtroom, right? I mean, it's just the setting matters, the role. Like you and Nate could be equally awesome with that kid and be wonderful, but you're wearing very different hats. Like the power dynamic in that way is so different. And so it's an interesting thing where we really do want to understand what's underneath that. I said what instead of why are they doing it? So what's underneath of what is the reason? But who does that will matter, right? And I know that you as a judge are in the room, like you need to know these things. And yet in some ways it's going to be really hard for a kid to be open in your courtroom, right? I mean,
that's my struggle when I said earlier about like, how do I bridge that gap? Because I really do want to be knowing that kid individually in a sense of like what's going on, what is it that we can do to help you and have that and trying to build that trust. And I know it's not going to happen in one meeting and everything else. So my hope is it's the long game I'm also playing is building trust with them one step at a time. But I'm constantly asking questions to people that are in this field or even the kids in front of me to try to figure out, oh, if I do this differently, this is going to play better with this with the kids. Like they're going to get this, they're going to put down their guard a little bit more.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll say this, right? It's going to be a lot, like he's saying, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you than it is to me. I look like them, I talk like them, and I dress like them, right? And there's a lot of things that I know, like the word trapping.
Yeah.
Right? So I know what trapping means. So if a kid's talking about trapping, I know exactly what you're talking about, right? Because I speak your language.
And you just taught me something today. So like now when I hear that, I have a whole new concept of what's going on.
Right. So I also think that like what we do at Benchmark Program and how we do it is so crazy because like we've said before, and I've heard you guys talk about it on the panel, it's not one key fits all.
Right.
Right. It's all these different people. And I feel as though someone like Will coming into the gym and me coming into the gym, let's say there's a kid, little Jimmy, has a gun and he's dealing with all these problems. I'm working with him, but I know that the best person for him is Will, but Will can't break down that barrier. I'm going to bridge the gap.
All right.
So now I'm gonna tell little Jimmy, Will's one of my best friends. Will helped me do this and this and this. You can trust Will. I trust Will. And now he's looking at Will like, I'll talk to you.
It's a different game.
Right?
So I was going to ask you, because you said there's other gentleman who's a mentor. You said he's the shorter gentleman.
Mark Corman.
How did he how did he get your trust? Because that's for me. I think it was Will who.
It was through Will.
All right.
It was through Will. And first couple times we met, it was real stale. We didn't really talk about much. And then I started having questions. I started finding out who Mark Corman really was, right? So I'm asking Will about Mark Corman, not asking Mark Corman about Mark Corman. Yeah. So Will's telling me who he is. And then I started asking Mark Corman about, what did you do for work? How did you handle this type of problem? And then once we started doing that, then we started building that relationship where then he was asking me, what's blood life like? And I'm like, it's like this. And then he's like, well, what does this mean? And, then he's like, well, how do you talk on the phone? And I'm telling him different type of lingo for oh man, I hope we cut that out. But I'm telling him stuff that, I wouldn't tell just anybody, right? Yeah. So now I feel like he's my friend. Then he invited me over to his house, beautiful house.
So that was the other thing I was, Ryan, thinking about is the idea of, you said before, you only get to see a young person for a short amount of time and you don't be able to follow up. Even here, right? If you could be the most credible person in the world because of your life experience, but if you're not consistent,
right,
then forget about it. It doesn't matter that you saw him the one time. And so that, what you just described in that story, it's not just one conversation. It's that you keep going back to that. And I think that's one of the things that you can offer here. You're seeing these kids over and over, and you're not going to do it right every time, right? I assume you make mistakes all the time in the approach with young people. And yet you have multiple chances to get it right because they keep coming back. And I think that is a thing that I know we often hear from young people who've experienced the system. By the time a kid gets in the juvenile justice system, there's oftentimes a lot of things that have gone sideways for him. And a lot of that comes from inconsistent people in their lives, people who have promised them things, done things, been there for a minute, but not been there.
I laugh because the number of times I've seen kids when mom or dad starts talking and making all these promises about how things are going to be different, and you see the kid's eyes roll and the head drop, and it's that inconsistency you're talking about. They don't trust the parent to back up their words. But that's before they get to the system. That's what they've experienced.
I also think that some of it comes from what kind of questions you ask them in the courtroom, and when you're trying to build that relationship, is it meaningful questions? Are these questions coming from, can I jam you up from something else, or is it just because you really care and you really want to know? And I think you being authentic and you being who you are, you can't relate to me about carrying a gun and selling drugs. You can't. But what you can do is you can ask questions, and I feel more comfortable with you, and then I'll start to tell you the reasons why I do it. Yeah. And I think that consistency and just being there, and I'm asking meaningful questions, not questions like, where'd you get the gun from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we can go get that guy too. It's not that. Yeah. It's what makes you feel like you need a gun? Do you not feel safe? What's going on in your neighborhood? What makes you feel like you need a gun to get home? And then you start breaking down, these guys at school, when I walk home, this might happen. So then you start breaking that down, and then I think that's when the real work starts to begin. When you really get to the root of what they're doing it for.
Yeah. It's really helpful for me to hear that, because it's another reminder to slow things down a step.
Right.
Sometimes you assume you know the answer, why they did X or Y, and slowing it down and just letting them have a chance to give the underlying why don't you feel safe, or what makes you not feel safe.
Right. You being in the courtroom, have you ever talked to a kid about has a kid ever talked about, or has anyone ever heard a kid say social media made me do it? Have they ever said seeing those things on social media kind of peer pressure me into being this kind of guy I am today?
Not pressured into, but I have the kids who the fight is over social media, then leading to someone showing up with a gun,
right,
and shooting at someone. I've had that where social media has been the platform for where the disagreement or argument starts.
Yeah,
and there's in dealing with bullying and things like that, but no one's saying I'm trying to imitate a social media person.
Yeah, I think social media has such a crazy presence in our kids' lives and everyone's lives now. I remember when I first started a gang in Lancaster County, it was because of Chief Keef when he first came out, and they were talking about 300 O Block and OTF. So then that came over to Lancaster, and what we started doing was the blocks that we were chilling on. If it was the 500 block, we were 500. If you were on a 400 block, you were 400. And that kind of like, once like social media kind of like blew up and we started seeing those things, that's how we started like getting gang names, and we thought it was cool. You know, we thought like this was the norm.
I see the same thing, the 500s, like the kids that relate to the numbers based on the block they live.
Right. Yeah, it's different. Have you ever seen?
Yes, I have. No, but just something that I was thinking about was even so when I first started at Benchmark, just kind of tying in like how to go through and gain those relationships. Obviously, me and Nate don't look the same. The kids look at me and they're like, "Who the hell is this guy?" But the thing is like you were talking about Chief Keef. So like when I first started at Benchmark, I did not know who that was.
Right.
So then when I went home is I'm going to learn a ton about Chief Keef and like doing my internet research of like, OTF, what does that mean?
Right.
And like all those different things. But I think that working with kids in the juvenile justice system, if you are able to come back and be like, hey, what you talked about yesterday, I heard, and I went and did research on it. And I'm here because I care about you. And now me walking around, I know all this information about drill. I know who Lee Ford is.
Right.
I don't know why, but I do.
Kwani.
Yes. And I know what the song Doot Doot is. And I'm like, and I know those lyrics because the kids are like, oh, you don't know this song? It's like, so sorry, we're going to turn off the Zach Bryan or the Miles Davis tonight. And Doot Doot's going to come on and this is going to be it. But I think that just being a really good connection point as well.
That just shows though, like how much like you're willing to go above and beyond. It's like I said before I met you three today, I did a bunch of research on who you guys were because I know like this podcast was meaningful to me, and I know getting in front of you guys was gonna be a big deal for me. Hearing you speak, so I did my research. So the same with Whit does his research, and he finds out, oh, Chief Keef is this person. You got Lil Durk and all those Lil TJs and Lil this and Lil that. He did his research. He doesn't even listen to that music, but he has some common ground now.
Right.
So when the kid's like, you don't know who this is, and he's like, actually, I do. Now I can rap Lee Ford with you in the car.
I don't know if I can rap with him, but I had a kid who I had him coming every week to court because the only way he ever behaved was if he had court like right in front of him. Because if the court was 3 months out, he'd wait to 2 months to start behaving.
Yeah.
So like, all right, we'll come every week. We'll just sit down and talk. So I asked him what he listened to, and young boy NBA, and I'm like,
NBA, young boy.
No idea. I'm like, all right, I didn't say a word. I just asked him for things. So I'm like, before next week, I'm going to listen to this, and I also know all the F this, the shit this, and I'm like, all right, this is going to be an interesting conversation. So he and I walked in the next week, and I was able to tell him names of songs. And the fact that guy had turned a different leaf. He had actually started talking publicly about how he felt his music was a wrong influence. He didn't know any of this, and he turned to his mom, who was sitting there and goes, do you believe this? He listened to this. I said, I'm in. I've got my in with this kid now.
Yeah.
Like he heard that I listened to him.
You met him where he was.
It's different.
But it was funny because there was a whole lot of stuff. I was like, all right, this is an interesting conversation here.
It's intense. Yeah, that's an intense rapper for real. For real. But I think that's it's crazy that I don't know. Like I've been in front of a lot of judges, and I've never had anyone go to that extent to build that type of rapport with me. You know, and then me growing up in the court system, and you know, seeing my brothers and all of them, and I just know the judges are taking my family away. And then when I step in front of them, I got no words for them. I know what you're about to do. So it is what it is.
I'm trying to break that down.
That's different. It's a different. You got a different approach, and it's a great approach. And
that's important. I'm glad you said, because it's not even that when a young person's going to court or getting arrested or seeing a probation officer, that they're going in just neutral, like prove to me that I'm not supposed to be scared or that I should trust you. They're not coming in neutral. They're actually coming in with already a history because of other people in their life who've experienced this, maybe in front of the same judge, right? Like depending on where you are. So
Right.
they've had those experiences. It might be their parents, it might be their sibling, it might be their friend. And so, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to get over, like in building those relationships and understanding that. And I think that question of asking people, do they distrust the system? Like they kind of should distrust the system. Like there's lots of reasons why they would come in and not be like, these people have my best interests at heart. Like there's lots of reasons to not think that. And that the fact that you're starting with that uphill battle makes the job of judges hard. It makes the job of probation hard. It makes the job of the system hard. And I think it's important to know that and not personalize that, right? Because it's hard to do, but it's not about you. It's about like what they've already come in and seen.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Yeah.
We talked about it. I told him I was on probation since 6th grade. 6th grade, I just got off probation when I was 25 years old.
So it was half your life on
Your whole
probation.
life.
By the time you're 25, you've been in probation for half your life.
Right. And
That's crazy to me.
And I'm talking about like probation where like you can't leave 30 miles from your house. You have to let the probation officer know what car you're going in, who you're going with, the place that you're staying, if there's a dog in the car, everything. What color is the car?
So everything that I could do not being on probation and I'm not breaking any laws and I can do it just freely, you had to get permission for those things, even though they weren't violation of any law.
Yep.
And that's really hard. I said I use the word tripping up. It's so hard not to step on one of those lines because anyone else can do it and that's not a problem.
Well, and also that duration is crazy to me. Like just, I mean, anyone, right? Like there's only so long you can do anything without making a mistake. So like the idea of doing it for that long. But the other thing that I think is so upsetting to hear that story, so I appreciate you sharing that, but is that, the whole thing we want for young people is to imagine a world free from the system. Like we don't want the people in your county to know you, right? Like they should know you exist as a judge, but we don't want them to ever see you in the courtroom. There's no good situation where they're seeing you in the courtroom. If a young person's already been before you, the best thing that could happen is that they never see you again. Under what world would it be okay? Like if it was your own kid to like, you have kids, right? To be under probation for 13 years. Like that's just, as a child, like to do that. Like how is that teaching someone about a world where they're able to go and do great things? And I think that the more often that we keep telling kids that you're not worthy of something different, like the less chance we're going to have of seeing them succeed. And again, like that's why a place like Benchmark is so good, because it's really like built on the idea of like, you want to know what they're into, right? And like, you're like, I want to build off from that and help you be who you're going to be, like, which is very, very different than conform to like, follow these rules. And that's how we know you're doing well. Following rules for 6 months doesn't tell us a lot about whether someone's going to succeed in the long term. Like we want a lot more from them, which is again, like what we would want for anyone in our own life. We would always want more than just, can you follow these 8 things and stay out of trouble?
Some of the rules too on for probation are just like unrealistic. One of the rules was you can't be around anybody else that's on probation.
Right.
My dad's on probation. What are you talking about?
Well, and in Lancaster City, there's one high school, right?
Yes. Right.
So so automatically,
so it's just like it almost sounds like they can violate you for everything. Another rule was I forget the other rule. It was crazy too though. I couldn't be around any firearms, no matter what. My dad has a weapons license, so I couldn't technically be around my dad.
Did you ever use that against the police?
What?
That you can't be around people with firearms?
No,
I was just joking. You shouldn't do that.
I mean, we've seen it where obey.
That's a violation too, though.
We've seen
police contact.
We've seen obey parents at all times. I mean, what teenager? It doesn't make any sense to the reality of the experience of being a teenager, where all teenagers have conflict with their families.
That's the reason I'll give props to the probation officers I work with. They view those things with a lot of latitude. They're trying to work with mom and the kid, or dad and the kid, to get through that. Like, there's going to be some things they're not running to court to tell me that.
Right.
But what you said, like, you're not supposed to be around other kids that are on juvenile probation, right? That was one of the rules.
Right.
So you're supposed to turn on your friends and not associate with them, and that's going to be cool, right? That's going to do you well.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible. How do you expect me to do that?
Well, I understand that. So I'm a little frustrated because I'm like, if we tell you're not allowed to be around this kid, are we throwing away that other kid because he's such a bad influence that he can't be around you?
Right.
Shouldn't we? My view is we should try to lift you all up
Together.
and change the thinking. So I get it when I hear, all right, they're hanging out with someone else in parade. I'm like, if they've been friends since they were 5 and they're now 13 or 14, and you're going to rip that apart, that's not. I don't think we're going to win. I think we're gonna get resistance instead of cooperation.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of things change. You got any questions with? Or you guys can ask us questions too. Like if you wanted to ask me a question, I'm fine with that as well.
Well, I would love to understand, from your experience now here at Benchmark, I mean, really both of you, but I think it's especially Nate, after what you're describing as your experiences before coming here, like, what's the secret sauce for you? Like, what is it that makes this, it's like we can walk into the program and see the weights, right? But we know it's not the weights, right, in its own right. Like we can see boxing equipment and we know it's not like the boxing equipment in its own right. So like, what's the thing? Like, what is it that brings kids back? And what is it that helps you be successful in helping young people see like a brighter future for themselves?
Just for me or the entire like
from your experience, like what do you think is the magic of it?
I think it's like I said, I think a lot of it comes from I build rapport fast because I look like them. I talk like them, and a lot of them know their big brothers know who I am. I'm not that old. I'm 27. So their big brothers and their uncles know. They're like, "Oh, my uncle knows you." I'm like, "Yeah." And then they see me doing this and they're like, "All right, I'll talk to you. I want to talk to you." A lot of it comes from honestly just like the consistency of just being here and being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So when they ask me about my kids, I tell them like when I first had my daughter, I didn't want to hold her or give her a bath or anything. I didn't want the connection because I knew eventually I was going to end up in jail or I was going to die. And if I end up in jail, I didn't want to feel weak. So I didn't want the connection. So these are things that I'm telling kids to explain to them, like, this is who I was. It's a completely different story now, but this is who I was. So being that, having that, like, that vulnerability with the kids and letting them know, like, I'm human too. I've made plenty of mistakes. I've gotten shot before. I lost 4 liters of blood. The bullet stuck in my spine. I've done the things that you're doing. And I'm letting you know that, like, it's still possible for you to make the change. I'm here now. I'm on a podcast with 3 people that I've never thought I'd be on a podcast with, right? Not you, Will. It was Ken.
Does that naturally then lead to the conversation about, like, their decision making? Like, when they start to build that bond where you're like, I've been in your shoes. Like, do you start to then, you feel like they start to ask you, I guess, for advice, even if it's indirectly, or they're kind of leaning into you for advice?
So my approach is completely different from just giving a kid advice.
Yeah.
I really pride myself on creating critical thinkers. I want you to be able to think for yourself and get yourself out of the situation. And that me asking you a bunch of questions so that you come to the conclusion that I could have just told you like that.
Yeah.
I'm empowering you so that you feel as though you can make that decision yourself. And now you feel the next situation, you don't have to come find me. You can come find me so we can talk through it again.
Yeah.
But you know what you need to do because you thought through it the first situation.
Yeah. I think even to add to that, so like even for me, I don't have that lived experience. I can't have those conversations with them about those things. But one important thing, like in terms of like the secret sauce, is the authenticity part. And like Nate mentioned, like the vulnerability, but even just like when navigating the system, just being honest about like what's taking place.
Yeah.
So like when we go to court, like the biggest thing that like we'll go and try to do is explain what's going to happen when they walk in there. And it's like really like we'll be there and it's like, hey, you're going to walk in and this is what this person is and this is what they do. And it could be the DA. There's going to be 3 people in these rows back here. They're either interns or they're new and they have like nothing to do with what's going on. They're not there for you. They're there because they're told to be, because they got to get hours or whatever it is. But explaining everyone, and it's like there's going to be 2 people. There's going to be 2 police officers that are going to stand behind you, and the reason for that is that's just what they do. That's just where they're going to be. It's not because of anything that you did. but just the authenticity through each different part. There have been times where, especially like the high school, we have a program at the high school where students will come to us and they're like, hey, this situation just happened with this teacher, and they'll explain it. And it'll be the case where the kid's kind of in the right. And you're like, yeah, like, so like, and you're like, oh, so then you have to go through and navigate that situation where it's not just like authority figure, but it's explaining to the student, hey, this situation didn't go your way, but these are the steps that you need to take because this is going to help you in the long run of going through being the bigger person, maybe apologizing to the teacher, and also just even viewing their perspective of they could have had a really tough day. It doesn't have to be, it wasn't necessarily directly about you. It could have just been, this is what, you're wrong person, wrong time. But I think
there's completely times though where like I've agreed with kids, like when they got sent to us for cussing out a teacher, and I'm like, no, I agree with you. I would have been mad too. I'd have been upset. But then, you know, like then you start asking those questions of like, what if someone cussed you out in front of the entire classroom? How would you feel? And they're like, I wouldn't like that. You know, I feel disrespected.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think that you should have done differently? Maybe I could have just asked to have a conversation. Oh, so you can pull this teacher to the side and have a conversation with them. You think that you can do that? Yeah, I could have done that.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even there was a girl who came to our program. She went and like cussed out her teacher, but the teacher went and like told the entire class what her grade was and like listing all these assignments and everything. And then, so like we were talking with this young girl, and it was like, hey, like, I agree with you. Like, that's not fair. Like, that's not good. And then the conversation then turned toward, hey, but maybe there's a different way to go about that next time.
Yeah.
What do you mean? It's like, well, right now that teacher's in their classroom doing their thing, and you're with us, and you're suspended from school for like 5 days. So how we're going to talk about winning situations.
Right.
Yeah.
You told her, but now you're going to fall. We're going to try our best not to make sure of this, but you're going to fall behind in your classes a little bit. Or now your teacher's going to be like, oh, like this person's suspended. And like, oh, did you hear what happened?
Well, we tell kids all the time, like, you can act out as much as you want, right? They have their degree, their diploma, and they get paid every 2 weeks. And it's a lot easier to kick you out because you're disturbing their classroom, and they could just teach the other 22 kids that are left over.
But I thought what you said, Nate, like you taught a lesson in empathy, right? Like the idea of how could I put myself in the other person's shoes and think about how they felt in that situation as the young person themselves is feeling like they've been disrespected, but for them to see it the other way and go, well, how would I feel if I was the teacher? And I'm in a room of 30 kids and one of them, you know, talks to me that way. I mean, I think that is such an important thing for all of us to learn. And I think that doing it in a way that's not like some clinical way of doing that, but just actually through the experience of talking it out, you're teaching a lesson and a kind of basic skill of like taking the moment to go, hold on a sec. Because we all do this, right? We all do things every day where we get mad at something that's happening and we don't put ourselves in the other person's shoes, whether we're driving our car or whether we're doing like whatever. The idea of actually pausing and saying, hold on. I mean, that's a really important thing to do.
This is just that shift in perspective. You know, like you're thinking real short term. You're angry right now. You want to do something right now.
Yeah.
Let's shift that perspective a little bit. You know, how does this affect you long run? Now does, you know, I hear all the time, this teacher hates me. This teacher doesn't like me. I guarantee that's not the case.
Right. They might not spend enough time to hate you. Like they might not think about you long enough to hate you.
Right.
Like,
so
that's the reality. We're so, in general, as human beings, we always think about everything's about us, right? That's our natural instinct. And like, teacher hates me. No, the teacher's probably frustrated and in the moment trying to do something. And if you react really fast, it's going to get worse.
Yeah. But one of the big things is just kind of letting these kids know, like, you know, you're the main character in your story. You're not the main character in everyone else's.
Right.
But in your story, you are.
Right.
Yep.
But not everyone feels the same
Everyone
way.
has their own story. Right?
Right. But before we wrap this up, I just wanted to know, what are one of the biggest things or the biggest challenges moving forward as far as you guys' career? What is the biggest challenge or the biggest hurdle that you're trying to get over and overcome right now? Some adversity.
You want to start, Ryan?
If you have something, go right ahead. Otherwise, I mean,
I mean, I'll start. I think one of the biggest challenges we have that is a forever challenge is the negative narratives about young people. Every generation, you can go back centuries, right? And it's always like kids these days. Kids these days are the problem. And I think in today's landscape where the way we consume information and the way everything is such a intense take on things going on, it really concerns me. And when we mix that with race of kids and the places where they live, we're battling a lot. And so I look at it, looking at the macro level of what's going on with kids in crime, and we can look at like when Ryan and I were teenagers, this country had a way higher level of juvenile crime than it does right now. And yet there's this perspective that things are always getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are specific things that are more challenging. I imagine as a judge today, knowing that there are just way more firearms out in the world, and that means more kids are picking them up, is a very scary thing and raises a lot of questions of like, what do we do about that? But to me, I think the biggest challenges we have is how do we make sure that we get more kids exposed to places like Benchmark when they're getting in trouble? Because I do think that we have an understandable but wrong instinct, which is the worst thing that a kid does. Our instinct is to give them our worst. And I think that we have to figure out how to reverse course on that, because all the wonderful things you do here, and you do a range of work here, but the best part is that you're saying, actually, we're raising our hand. We want to take on kids who face the most difficult challenges. That's what we're trying to do. And it's really wonderful to do. Everyone needs a mentor. Everyone needs an after-school program. But saying like we want to do it for kids who present with some of the biggest needs, we want to work with kids who've harmed other kids.
Right.
Yeah.
That takes something really special, and we just need a lot more of that. So it's awesome that you're here doing it. It's like, how do we have 50 more benchmarks, whether it's this program or something that comes with the same spirit, values, detail, all of it like that? I think we need a lot more of that. That is a challenge right now.
Oh, it is. I said earlier, I think human capital that's in this field that's willing to work with kids and be that positive adult influence. I think that's a huge gap. It's probably always been the gap, but that's one thing of it. And then I'll flip it to the other side, is because I'm part of the system, is that giving the system an opportunity to realize that it's not, you don't have to accept the system as it is. And the reality is the system is just a bunch of people.
Yep.
And give some of us the chance who I like to think like I'm willing to push against what the norm is or what's always been done, and not just show up and process, but actually engage. Give us a chance. When you're on the other side, don't assume that we're all have that mindset of like throw away the key, lock a kid up and throw away the key. Right. That there are some of us out there, and I think there's a lot of us out there who want the opposite.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you guys for cutting out some time to talk to us. And I do want to say that I definitely was blown away by you guys on the panel and in this room, just the answers that you've given and the vulnerability of you being able to shed some light on the inside of both of your jobs. And we really do appreciate you guys. So
awesome.
Thanks,
Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
See you.
That was fun.